wasn't entirely sure what the plan was. I just know I had to get out of the house. Walking for me used to be a great way to focus, and the benefit of exercise a bonus. 7 kilometres a day was the routine for me on my treadmill. Unfortunately, it's been years since this activity's been enjoyed. Working at I had sustained several injuries, many injuries, and the most devastating had been 2 spinal injuries. Everything now is dominated by pain and incredible loneliness. Life is stagnant. My ambitions, motivation, focus have been stolen away by the slow, rancid Deadpool my existence has become. Eventually, all had fallen into decay. Months, even years, I've been avoiding this, putting pen to paper, somehow only confirming intuitively what I already knew. The reality of my feelings, how my life now manifests, is just too painful to acknowledge. I am absolute, beyond redemption. There is no saviour to champion my plight. Where my mind now dwells, reality is darkness. The spark of life within vanquished, I am worthless. Life has been a series of cascading failures. All that I love, all that is dear, giving life meaning, has been removed. I've experienced pain and loss just like anybody else. Schoolyard bullying, broken relationships, a sexual assault as a teenager, but I got through it. But now I can honestly say I've truly abandoned all hope. My mind telling me that there's nothing left to fight for. No motivation to endure. I had no resources left within me anymore. I'd been fighting a war of attrition against for over a decade. Truly a broken man. I'd fallen. I have a brutally fractured soul and a void once where a loving heart occupied. Primarily, there were always 3 compelling reasons, regardless of circumstance, that would provide me the inertia to get up and to fight. Marcus, Jordan, and Drake, my greatest legacy. My 3 beautiful boys, but circumstance, injury, illness had removed these cornerstones from my life, seemingly absent too early, leaving me unostensibly without purpose and incomplete. One by one leaving, and as each did, the pain compounded, intensified. It was too much. My injuries, my state of mind fed the loss even more. Wave after wave of grief washed over me with the millstone of abandonment around my neck. The final tsunami of despair hit me and my tears became the ocean. As I walked, these thoughts, these feelings kept racing through my mind on loop over and over and over again, a cacophony of paralysing judgment and catastrophe. I was given notice to vacate the rental property that the 4 of us shared. It was the last time that we would all live together. My quartet had been disbanded. Now I'm facing an uncertain future, injured and alone. I was scheduled for spinal surgery at the time, but there was no compassion from the estate agent. I'd lost my family home as a direct result of my injuries a couple of years prior. Finding a rental property now is such more difficult, as I'm only receiving a fraction of a part-time compensation income. The possibility of becoming homeless was now very real. I wanted to be as close as I could to my youngest, to my baby, Drake, though now 12. I can't bear being separated from him, or from the very few years left before he'll be too old to want to spend time with his dad. My pain levels had now increased significantly as I walked, and I was beginning to think that I'd made a very big mistake. I decided to continue to walk. I was just going to see my son Drake at his mother's. With my hiking stick, I began to ascend the gentle incline up the bridge that spanned the Monash Freeway. I couldn't go any further. The pain was so punishing. By this stage, I'd broken into a stony sweat from the opiates I needed, more medication, but I had none on me. Until recently, I was taking hundreds of pills a week, treating my numerous conditions. The pain was severe, and a lot of the time the pain medications were cold comfort as I'd built up a tolerance from being a long-time consumer. I was at the crest of the hill. I was on the bridge. I'm forced to rest and take the air. While I was catching my breath, I noticed the guardrail on the bridge. In my mind, I was trying to envision the best way to climb over the rail. It was just an innocent, benign, mental, mathematical or physics exercise, a fleeting thought. But out of nowhere, these thoughts birthed feelings, and they gripped me like a bear trap. Instantly, a heaviness descended upon me like a black mist, enveloping me completely, manifesting grief, loss, depression of tremendous intensity. The thought was now very rapidly becoming a plan. This was it. I was about to become a jumper. I have to be sure. Was I willing to follow through? I couldn't chance the expenditure of failure. I'd spent 3 weeks in a psychiatric hospital in the last year, and I promised myself that I'd never go back to that place again. I dedicated the last half hour of my life hatching a plan. I had to ensure I'm not stopped and sectioned. It wasn't unusual to lean on the barrier and watch the traffic go by, but the moment it has climbed, it's a game changer. Would I be seen? Would somebody come to stop me, or worse still, call the police? I was now sweating profusely. The veins in my temples were pounding with every heartbeat. I felt soulless. I was able to move my limbs, but something was taking place I just didn't understand. A calmness into my being, and my soul or my spirit had moved into what I can only describe as a parallel dimension. Complete detachment and disassociation. It dawned on me that my connection to this world had been severed. I had passed through the valley of death. Not the shadow, but death itself. The world about me conveyed an unearthly silence. No longer the sound of traffic, just deathly silence and tranquility. I had indeed abandoned despair. I walked to the side of the bridge to ensure the traffic was now behind me, and the road was my cover. I had the assurance that the traffic would not have time to stop before impact. I looked to the sky one last time, and I noticed a murder of crows silhouetted by the setting sun on a distant fence line. Still, silent lucidity had taken the distraction of sound, as if I was in a vacuum, all sound removed from my environment. I was in a trance, dancing with death, and it held me in its arms. I had no fear nor trepidation, but I found peace. I was tired of what my life had become. I am summoned, called to plunge into the hereafter as if by the sweet sirens of the deep. Caw, 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 caw! Crows whisked past me, instantly snapping me out of my self-induced mortnosis, suddenly entering my head like mine bullets. Images of my children flooded and consumed me. What about the poor driver who had hit me? I questioned, like a laser entering my third eye. Consciousness was reignited, my soul reanimated. I realised there was a gift within me. I cared for the welfare of the poor driver who would also be a victim of my actions. The mortgage I had powered over my life had been suspended. As death's grip lost its hold, within my head I was screaming, unable to comprehend what I was seconds away from undertaking. I'm sure I'm in shock. What can I do to push this desire from my thoughts to leave this world? Drake. As quickly as I could, with my hiking stick, I hobbled off the bridge and I walked. I gazed at the footpath, in particular the cracks in the footpath, superstitiously ensuring not to tread on any. Now, with the help of gravity, I was descending the crest of the bridge, moving further and further away with every crack crossed. Deep inhalations of life-giving breath feeding my soul. I want to hug my son. I want to feel his loving embrace. The ground beneath my feet had now levelled out, and I noticed Jake's parents standing on the footpath in front of me. Do I stop and talk? I wasn't even sure if I could talk. They turned towards me, and as I approached they said, "Oh, hi," and asked after Jordan. Jordan was my middle son, friends with their son, Jake. I explained I hadn't seen him in a while, then came the tears. I apologised as I tried to articulate how much I miss my boys and how much trouble I'm having adjusting to this new life situation. I believe they were put in my path as a sign. They are lovely people, and they understand my tears. They had known my dedication raising my boys over the years. Jordan was only 6 months old, now 21. They left me feeling a little bit more grounded. I don't recall if I let Drake know I was dropping by, but I held him like I hadn't seen him in years, and I always make it a point to tell my kids that I love them with every contact. Little did Drake know that instead of me knocking on the door, it could have been the police, removing their hats as they confirmed the occupants and asked if they could come in. It then occurred to me what an incredibly difficult position it must be for any police officer to deliver such devastating news to any family. Most people, thankfully, will never know what it's like to battle on a regular basis or for an extended period of time this kind of headspace, let alone trying to understand it. This was not my first dance with death, nor my last. One of the worst things I've found is when I try to ignore these feelings. Because if I do, they come back, and when they do, they bring friends like self-pity, worthlessness, hopelessness, self-loathing. You get the picture? Now I'm learning to acknowledge the thought and say to the thought, not just now, I have work to do. Then, like a haunting vesper, the power diminishes. It's taking a lot of practice, and by no means is it easy, but the darkness is part of me. I just accept it and I don't empower it. I'm learning that constantly telling myself these thoughts are wrong, I inadvertently undervalue myself as a person. Instead, I give the thought a seat and offer it a cup of tea and ask it, what is it that you're not getting? I find this helps because I'm in fact looking for something missing or to fill a void. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is hell. While living in ignorance, my self-worth is in decline. These dark, painful feelings will test every aspect of your character. Despite what most people think, darkness is not inherently evil. Enlightenment can only be achieved if we are willing to illuminate our own darkness by facing it. Objectivity is paramount. Just allow the feelings to the surface. Think of yourself as an onlooker or a third-party spectator. Remember, you're dealing with a very deep-seated part of the human condition, the indoctrinated and now indigenous survival tools acquired in order to overcome perceived shortcomings. They can be born out of horrific tragedy, loss and grief, an experience of emotional magnitude. Somewhere along the way, equilibrium had been lost due to overcompensating. Now there is an imbalance. And here is the problem: left unchecked, life is propelled into disillusion of self. What we developed in order to survive now enslaves us. Here lies the paradox: the antidote had become the poison. As an onion has many layers, so do our emotions. On the surface, the superficial, the thin and the flaky. But as you go deeper, the layers become tougher to peel back. Here is where you encounter resistance and tears, the wounded child and the spores of melancholy. Be gentle with yourself and remember that this is a process, and you may need help and comfort from others. Do not confront, do not judge, just allow these feelings to make themselves known. Do not label, just let them rise, breathing in and out compassion, allowing love to guide your thoughts. As I know myself, these feelings have a story attached. Don't get caught. If you do, it's like a hook with many barbs. Just cut the line, take a step back and let go. It's progression, not perfection we are seeking. These feelings are anima, the primordial mammalian instinct initiated by the will to self-preserve. If forced, it can quickly regress back to the self-destructive beast we are trying to tame. Try putting a tiger back into the cage after you've given its tail a prod. It's not pretty. We've all done it. We've been doing it all our lives. As in nature, there are cycles, seasons and stages. You cannot cheat. I'm told not to cultivate weeds, but what is a weed? This is something I learned studying horticulture. The answer may surprise you. A weed is a plant considered undesirable in a particular situation, a plant in the wrong place. Taxonomically, the term weed has no botanical significance, because a plant that is a weed in one context is not a weed when growing in a situation where in fact it is wanted, and where one species of plant is a valuable crop, another species of the same genus may be a serious weed. For example, you have feelings that rise up associated with a very painful and destructive relationship. This may be represented by a rose. But the field that you are growing is meant to be growing cannabis hemp. Then the rose in this case would be considered the weed. It is not in its correct place. This brings me to my next point. If we look at our lives as a set of three files, past, present and future, it's very easy for our feelings to make a clerical error and put the files from the past in the present and the present into the past. Either way, both weeding and filing require work. Very slowly we will come to realise that these once overwhelming feelings have a less gravitational pull. We have found a new hard-earned strength. We face our ultimate challenge, the holy grail of the human being encountering the spiritual experience. We search for the true self that has been hidden away and forgotten, the blueprint of our soul, our hopes, our dreams, our drives, our passions, our reason for existence. As we clear away the clutter of emotional boxes and excruciating experiential baggage, we rediscover that locked, buried door at the core of our being. But where is the key? What is the key? We've always possessed the key, but not knew its meaning, its purpose. We saw it as a curse and we tried to avoid it at all costs. But unknowingly it always presented itself in ways and places that were inappropriate, unbalanced and all-consuming. The key is the gift of pain. Pain lets us know that we are alive, and once we are aware of this, we can allow the healing to begin and the journey to boundless joy and hope. We create ripples in our lives that touch others in other ways that no one else can do. We are unconditional love and acceptance. Enlightenment is a destructive process. It has nothing to do with becoming better or being happier. Enlightenment is a crumbling away of untruth. It's seen through the facade of pretense. It's the complete eradication of everything we imagine to be true. Adyashanti. I by no means have mastered this, but I have observed it. We are worthy of love, and we must be willing to let go and to forgive the one person that deserves it the most, you. If you're a grower, you're a knower. You have achieved great things. You are part of the greatest story ever told. You have been to hell and buggered off with the keys to your own salvation and left another empty grave. Death shall come on swift wings for those who disturb the tomb of the king. Everybody was uttering these words when Sir Howard Carter discovered the tomb of Tutankhamun. Well, I say, a murder saved my life and a raven gave me back my wings. A semicolon is used by an author when they could have ended their sentence but chooses not to. The author is you and the sentence is your life. This mark represents mental health struggles and the importance of suicide prevention. My contribution to Project Semicolon. Sean Was, a jumper, semicolon. I ask that our government legalise the compassionate use of cannabis. Thousands and thousands of people are dying every year from overdose, whether intentional or accidental, from big pharma medications. I'm tired of being caught on this roundabout of pain and suffering. I want sovereignty over my own body. I want the right to choose what medicine I put into it. We need law reform, and we need it now. Compassion is not a crime. It's time Australia begins to heal.